Great to have you with us on the show today, Mr. Adam. Now, of course, this groundbreaking center, it will be critical for the continent, especially in advancing digital technology and, of course, cultivating the necessary skills and education that we need in the digital economy. So the first question that comes to mind is, why did you choose the Republic of Congo as the location for the center?
So good evening from Brazzaville, and thank you very much for having me. So first of all, I think we need to recognize what's the importance of artificial intelligence, and it is one of the building blocks of the digital economy. And African countries have, by adopting, for example, the African Union Digital Transformation Strategy, recognized the importance of investing in these building blocks to be able to make sure that African countries are able to use these technologies. And Congo was one of the countries that already had certain research capacity, and they had been asking African countries to come into a network. So there was already some efforts happening. And there was also discussions that we had been undertaking with them on having a regional platform for tracking COVID-19. And this was a COVID-19 information platform, which actually was going to use artificial intelligence. And one of the things we found was that when we tried to recruit experts for this, it was going to cost in the millions of dollars. And in the end, we managed to get some African expertise that existed at a much cheaper rate. And the idea was then born that we need to develop this capacity across the continent. And Congo offered to be the host and bring certain resources to the table. They have agreed to host it within the Denis Sassou Nguesso University. But it will be a center for the whole of the continent, which connects researchers across the continent and also develops the capacity of African countries to invest in this research and, most importantly, apply it to address the needs of African countries.
Now, it is quite exciting because the center is expected to be the first of its kind in Africa. But how will it compete with global players such as Google, who have launched their own AI centers in Ghana? That was back in 2019. So what's the expectation?
We see it as complementary, because ultimately, if we look at ecosystems around the world that have been successful in fostering innovation, they have not done so in a bubble. It has happened usually when there is even competing research happening, and which is, I would say, cross-fertilizing. And I think we need to keep in mind also the difference in mandate. Google is obviously a private company, and they are looking to develop this capacity ultimately for the purposes of developing their brand. And developing also economic opportunities associated with that. And that's something which is excellent and which is totally in line with also the goals of this regional center. This regional center is designed to connect governments, to researchers, to top quality research across the continent, and to connect universities, whether they be publicly owned or private, but bringing them together to be able to develop the interventions that can make a difference, and also creating an easily accessible place as well for potential budding entrepreneurs that want to apply these technologies in a way which solves the problems that they are facing every day. And we have had conversations with a number of partners in the digital space who are all supportive of the development of this center. So we see it as one of complementarity. While there may be some competition, it is one that will we think make the end result better for Africa.
Now, you also say this AI center will add a new dynamic to Africa's participation in the global value chain. How so?
Well, I think it really is about the economic model that Africa wants to see. We have seen that African growth in the last perhaps 2 decades has been driven particularly by exports of commodities or extractives, often with limited value addition. That has been fit for purpose. It has developed African economies successfully, but it also has limitations, and perhaps most visible in the context of COVID-19, where we're seeing that even though there is a recovery happening, it tends to be slower in Africa. The lack of diversification of economies has been shown to be real problem for this recovery and for resilience. Having technologies such as artificial intelligence in itself doesn't solve a problem, but having a large number of people who have access to these technologies means that they can apply them to real world problems that they're facing every day. And we've seen certain countries already using it. We've seen countries using artificial intelligence in drones to deliver medicines. We've seen telecommunication companies use these types of technologies to better connect people to their services. We've seen them also used in, for example, public health, in the agglomeration of data and the use of data, also in medical diagnosis, among some of the areas where this can be used, and increasingly around machine learning and therefore efficiencies that can be achieved through machine learning. Also in the world of e-commerce, which has actually had a mini explosion in the context of COVID-19, where even in Africa, which is the least connected continent, we have seen a lot of startups and businesses emerge on the basis of digital commerce. And artificial intelligence is one of those ingredients, it's one of those building blocks that allows e-commerce to happen. So when we look at the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is in its operationalization stage, if we want to really develop this deeper, more sustainable economy built on sustainable value chains, we need to use all of the levers available to make sure that African countries are involved in the intellectual property around these innovations, and that they can be more involved throughout the value chain and not only either as exporters or as consumers. And I think that this is one of the most meaningful interventions that we can make to make that kind of change in terms of African citizens' participation in the value chain.
Well, thank you so much. We do have to leave it there, but we're certainly waiting excitedly to hear more about the project. Thank you. That was Mr. John Paul Adam. He is the director at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa.